Hi, this is Lauren and Katie with a special broadcast from Alliance for a Better Utah, and live from Salt Lake City, it's election night! We were really proud of ourselves for coming up with that one.
And we have 2 more hours, so that's the best of our content right there.
Yeah, so we'll be streaming live everything that's going on with election night. This is to give you a behind-the-scenes look at what's going on with progressive candidates across the state and with the issues that a lot of you have been following. So we'll go until about 9:30 or maybe a little after. And yeah, follow us. You can follow along, follow us on Facebook, and feel free to leave comments, and we can address those as the night goes on.
Yeah, so let's start out the evening by talking about voter turnout. Utah, you are killing it with voter turnout. Or I guess, 15 more minutes until the polls close. So as of earlier today, over 700,000 Utahns had voted via mail-in ballot, which is more than the number of people who had voted in 2014. So amazing, considering that in 2016 we were 39th in the nation for voter turnout. This is a really awesome thing.
Yeah, and so as of the day, I guess as of last night, mail-in ballot turnout was at about 52%, and like Katie said, that was more than 2014, whereas through the whole election, it capped off at about 46%. So Utah's doing well. Yeah,
and if you're following hashtag Utah Poll or UT Poll on Twitter, you'll see there's been some difficulties with long lines, particularly in Utah County. It's looking like we've heard reports of somewhere like upwards of 90 minutes to 2 to 3 hours of waiting, and people are waiting in lines so that they can vote, which is amazing. We know, I've heard that the University of Utah ran out of provisional ballots and had to restock due to an unexpectedly high number of student voters. And around the nation, I think we're seeing a lot of people really turning out. So people have something to say, regardless of what it is. People have something to say, and they're showing it at the polls, which is excellent.
In Salt Lake County, there were over 25,000 new voters this year alone, which is pretty remarkable for a midterm year. So in terms of voter turnout, that's really encouraging.
Yeah. And people and media coverage that we've been seeing, it's been going on. The Salt Lake Tribune is doing updates to their election. What is this, blog article? In any case, they're saying that we may be, I think we've already surpassed 2016, is that right? Did we surpass numbers for 2016 voter turnout, which is a presidential year?
I'm not sure about that yet.
We're close.
But we'll see by the time that everything rolls in.
Yeah.
So if you are looking for Utah election results, you can find them on the New York Times website. They're reporting on that on each state elections, and they have really detailed breakdowns with precincts. Or if you want it directly from the state source, you can go to electionresults.utah.gov, and you can look at each local and state race there.
Yeah. And also something that's new this year statewide in Utah is that people can go to the polls and register there at the polls. So if you weren't registered, a lot of people are going to the polls that day and registering right as they're voting. And so this is new. Salt Lake County Clerk Sherry Swenson said this evening that in some polling locations, as many as half of the votes that were cast today were provisional ballots cast by new voters. So the good news is people are voting, people are taking advantage of this. The sad news for some of us is that means it's going to take a long time to figure out some of these close races. There are a couple really close state legislative races, and of course the big race that everybody is watching is the 4th Congressional District, which is the race between Representative Mia Love and her challenger Ben McAdams. So Robert Gehrke says, consider it overtime for people who like politics more than sports, which is me. Sports metaphors just go right over my head. But it's amazing. It's an amazing night for democracy and voter turnout. So that's very exciting.
Yeah. So that said, if you have your heart set on one of these really close races, don't hold your breath. Most counties won't be reporting, if it's a really close race, most county clerks won't be reporting final results until Friday. Mm-hmm. Salt Lake County has said they're doing it Thursday. Mm-hmm. And then Washington and Iron counties, so that's St. George in that area, won't be reporting until I think next Tuesday.
Yeah, and I think San Heat is, or Juab, I'm sorry, one of those two counties is also reporting on Tuesday. And the interesting thing about that is those counties are also, part of their counties are in CD4, the 4th Congressional District, which means that even though there's a small percentage of 4th Congressional District voters in those counties, I mean, depending on how close it is, it could be at least Tuesday until we find out. And so people are really anxious about it, but, you know, they want to get the numbers right.
Yeah.
So.
And a lot of Utah's voter turnout, I don't know, I think some of it can be ascribed to a bill that was championed by Representative Chavez Hout, who is sadly retiring from the Utah legislature this year. But she really emphasized same-day voter registration, which we're now seeing the results this year. So it's really encouraging that people are using that. She also pushed for opt-in automatic voter registration at the DMV. So this year I got a Utah license, and it was so easy for me to update my voter registration because they just asked me when I was doing it. I just had to say yes, and it was done for me. So that was super nice.
And you know, I have to say, we are a part of. Oh, we're getting our mic played with. Is that
Thanks,
better?
Chase.
We are. We have organization. We're a part of a national organization called Progress Now, and we have sister organizations in other states. And we've spoken with these other organizations in these other states about what voting looks like and what easy access to the poll looks like. And we have to say, like, on the whole, Utah does a very, very good job of allowing access to the ballot. And of course, this comes with provisions like San Juan County. We're having, of course, issues there, which have become a national, the national eye is on this race.
Yeah, the Department of Justice sent down people to watch the polls there and make sure that voter intimidation wasn't happening.
Right. And I mean, earlier this year, they had a situation, so they were told that by a federal judge that they had to redistrict because their districts were racially gerrymandered to disadvantage the Navajo voters there. And so they had to redistrict, so they are doing both local and federal races down there this year. And there is a Willie Gray Eyes, who is a vocal pro-Bear Eyes, Bears Ears, not Bear Eyes, Bears Ears proponent. Yeah, new monument. And he was removed from the ballot because the county clerk down there falsified a document. And so there have been all sorts of issues. He was reinstated on the document, on the ballot. But, you know, lots of hijinks happening down there in San Juan County. So, I mean, with the exception of San Juan County, on the whole, kind of state-led, in particular Spencer Cox, who is the highest elections official in the state, really, on the whole, good things. I mean, there's always room for improvement, but
we're happy to live in a state that does well at that. So right now we have 7 minutes. Sorry? Oh, we have 7 minutes until the polls close, and so we're going to talk to our board chair and founder, Josh Cantor, and he's going to talk to us more about ABU and about the progressive movement in Utah.
Hi guys.
Josh. Welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Oh, thank you. So, do you want to give our audience, we do a Better Utah broadcast every Wednesday at 12:30 p.m., but we're guessing that some people are going to be watching this broadcast who aren't familiar with us or our work. So do you want to give a brief rundown of what ABU does, why it matters, what we're trying to do?
Sure. Well, Alliance for Better Utah is basically got two sides to its work. It's got an educational and kind of civic engagement side. And as many people probably know, we host debates and panel discussions around different things, including this year we did a number of legislative debates. We offered debates actually in CD2 and CD4, and as you know, our Republican candidates turned those down, or actually wouldn't even respond to us. We hosted panel discussions on all of the 4 ballot initiatives for this year.
Well, the 3.
Sorry, yes, 3, exactly.
Yes.
Of course, the 4th didn't make it to the ballot, or made it in a different way. And then we have a accountability side of our work, and that really is what most people probably know Alliance for Better Utah for, and that's ranged everywhere from early work to filing the original complaint on John Swallow when he was our Attorney General and was being accused of a pay-to-play operation out of the Attorney General's office, all the way to our most recent FEC complaint filed against Representative Mia Love for some campaign finance violations that we believe she's engaged in, and holding people accountable for their votes and for the things that they do. We've done a number of things that relate to people's social media feeds and statements that they've made that we feel voters need to be aware of. And so we've seen a number of those this election cycle as well. So that's, and then we're up at the Hill every day during the legislative session. We, at least Lauren is, and Chase is. I've never been there, so I guess I can't say we. And we're following along to make sure people know what's happening up at the legislative session as well.
Yeah. So given that ABU's broader mission is to achieve more ideological and narrative balance in the state as a whole, in what ways have you seen, so ABU was founded in
2011.
2011. So in what ways have you seen the most positive change for the progressive movement in the past 7 years?
I think that, I think in terms of ABU's role, I think it's really been successful at balancing that dialogue. And so when conversations, obviously there have been conversations for a number of years since 2010, frankly, when Obamacare passed, about Utah expanding Medicaid. And so ABU, I think, has been an important part of that kind of conversation to just make sure that the conversation stays alive. Of course, this year we're finally seeing that in the form of Prop 3 and the Medicaid expansion initiative, and we'll see obviously tonight whether that passes finally. But I think that ABU has really tried to make that balanced dialogue a cornerstone of what we've done, and on any topic where we feel like there's really a very one-sided conversation that needs to be balanced out.
Yeah, and so even though at ABU we don't obviously participate in direct electioneering, we're a nonprofit, so we don't endorse or oppose candidates. But in terms of creating a landscape in which progressive candidates can succeed on the ballot, what do you feel like helps or harms those kinds of candidates the most?
Well, I think, generally I'd say in the progressive movement, I mean, one of the complaints, and I think it's just as applicable here in Utah, is that progressives, quite frankly, need to really figure out what we stand for and not what we stand against. And tonight's election hopefully is not just in Utah, but nationally, is hopefully a statement about that, and making sure that people are really voting for and expressing opinions about the policies that they stand for, and not really just looking at, whether they're anti-Trump or anti-this or anti-that. I think ABU has been helpful in, certainly in Utah, in making those conversations more about policy and about the ideals that people stand for, whether that's something like Medicaid expansion or medical marijuana or redistricting or any of the things that are currently being put up in terms of these ballot initiatives, or we've brought a lawsuit talking about partisan school board elections and are waiting for the Supreme Court of Utah to rule on that challenge as well. So things like that we can really make this about an issue-based discussion and really talk about the policy that we think that the majority of Utahns really stand behind and want, and the legislature is not reflecting that.
Yeah. And speaking of policy, this year was the first time that we put out a voter guide on the constitutional amendments that were on your ballots this year, and also on the ballot initiatives, or the propositions. Propositions
and the ballot question.
And
of course, question
1
on the
non-binding question.
Non-binding question. Right.
And that's on our website at betterutah.org. Hopefully you have already voted, but if you're still in line,
2 minutes.
Yeah, it's worth checking out.
And as you know, I think all of our favorite line in terms of the voter guide that we put out is somebody who emailed back and said, "I'm voting straight Alliance," which was really, really funny. And a great. It was great. Obviously, we want people to make their own decision, but it was nice that somebody wrote back and agreed with us in that way.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
We're heckling from the audience.
We have heckling from the audience. We're on Facebook Live. Hello.
We love all our hecklers. Thank you.
Polls close in 1 minute.
By the way, I think Bear's eyes might be more appropriate given its new size. Than Bear's ears, but
that's true. And it was split into two, so instead of
just trying to help you out there.
That's that's true.
Logic and reasoning here.
Okay, man, 1 minute till polls close.
And let me just tell the audience, I'm not looking. We have a CNN over here on our wall, so we're watching. I have a CNN over here on our wall, so I'm watching as Democrats ahead in race to control the U.S. House, is what they're saying. And of course, I am frantically refreshing my 538 updates, as they keep making me anxious with all of their, chances that, the House and the Senate will go one way or another.
Yeah.
And of course, there's governorships all over, right?
Right.
Which are interesting. I just saw, actually, a minute ago, they called Illinois for J.B. Pritzker, who is part of the Pritzker family back in my hometown of Chicago, and now he gets to inherit the problem of trying to figure out what to do with Illinois' fiscal crisis. So it'll be interesting to see what happens there. But 21 seconds.
Oh, we're doing a countdown.
They are doing a countdown.
Hold on, while we're looking at this. So real quick, ABC News has projected that Colorado 6th, Pennsylvania 5th, and Pennsylvania 17th, all three are Democratic pickups in Republican seats. So that's news from the House. Let's see what we have.
Mitt Romney won!
Mitt Romney.
Wait, did they wait till the polls closed? Oh, yes.
Yeah, polls are
Mitt
now
Romney has
closed.
won for Utah
I
Senate.
am shocked.
Not Utah Senate, Senate for Utah. All right, and so they're updating other polls. All right, so
Hey, I think we should just thank Jenny Wilson for putting
Yeah.
up a fight and at least trying
Yeah.
and representing a different set of values for the state. Obviously, she thought she was going to run against Orrin Hatch, and
Right.
running
Yeah.
against Mitt Romney was quite a change for her, and she stuck with it. And congratulations, Jenny, on a fight
Yeah.
well fought.
yeah,
She's a strong
absolutely.
candidate.
Yeah, absolutely. And I believe she was the only one woman running for a statewide race. Is that right in Utah? I think
That's
so.
probably right.
Yeah.
I think so.
Yeah.
And have we had a woman since Jan Graham
don't
in
think so.
statewide office in Utah? I don't think we have.
So lots to aspire to.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's see. We're updating.
And we will be talking to Jenny Wilson later this evening, as well as Shireen Ghorbani. We'll be doing a remote interview with Lee Castillo. And we'll be talking to some of our progressive members of the Utah legislature. We'll also be talking with our affiliates in Progress, Texas, to discuss the Senate race there, as well as Lonnie Scott from Progress Now National, who can talk to us about the national implications of the blue wave and what that means for progressive policies. So that'll be fun.
And some fun news from the University of Utah earlier today. The lines were so long and I think it was so cold outside, someone actually brought pizza to everybody as they were sitting there waiting to cast their vote, which I think is excellent. So pizza at the polls, it's alliterative and all the other things. So well done, that's excellent.
Good souls.
Yes.
So at 8:10, we're going to be sitting down with the students from March for Our Lives Utah, to talk about their work and how the March for Our Lives movement has influenced the midterm elections this year. Right now, we've prepared a short video of our favorite, the most memorable campaign ads that we've seen. So we're going to play that and let you guys watch it along with us.
Yep.
Yeah.
Some people see a dumpster fire and do nothing but watch the spectacle. Some are too scared to face the danger, or they think it will benefit them if they just let it keep on burning. Others shrug and say, oh, all this talk of a dumpster fire, it's just fake news. There is an inferno raging in Washington. But here in the land of 10,000 lakes, we know how to put out a fire.
I am Richard Painter, and I approve of this message.
I do not want my grandchildren living in a society of hate, intolerance, and fear of anyone who's different. I graduated from the University of Utah and hold a Certified Public Manager certification. I'm so excited to run this race and look forward to debating the Republican candidate. Thank you.
We've got room to put 2,700 people in our jail, and it costs us about $103 a day.
Gerald really doesn't have any hobbies.
Last year's tax rate was 0.4169. This year, we could take that down to 3.838.
So is he always like that?
Yeah, all the time.
Which means that the 3.838 is probably going to go somewhere between 3.838 and 41.69.
Most people leave their work at the office.
We got 3 light rail cars. You can put 60 people on each car. So even if you add 2 cars, you're talking about maybe 300 people that are affected. There are 1 million people in this community. I mean, that is 0.01 to the 8th power. If you round it off, it's 0.
All he wants to do is fix things.
So I got this 18-wheeler that's parked in this neighborhood, few and fume.
fumes all over the place, but quite frankly, it's not a code violation.
You know, I think I like helping around the house here.
Please re-elect Gerald. Please.
I thought I was good at hiding.
Then Eric Paulson comes along. I mean, how can you have tens of thousands of people looking for you all the time and not one of them find you? I started to wonder, did Eric Paulson really exist? I mean, where's the proof? Some blurry photo taken from miles away? I had to know, so I had to come up with a plan. Paulson takes piles of money from Big Pharma and votes to erode essential healthcare protections. So, the most likely place to find him is at a big pharmaceutical company. And that's where I went. I was prepared to stay there for weeks. It took 7 minutes. I was so shocked when I saw him walking by, I almost dropped the camera, but I got it. Visual proof. So take it from me, Bigfoot. Eric Paulson really exists.
Here you go, Congresswoman Comstock.
Hey, Dan, isn't that Congresswoman Comstock back there at the bar?
Sure is.
Bet you can't get her to hold a town hall.
Town hall? Do you want better than that? We've lost that love and feeling.
No, Dan.
Never hold town halls anymore with constituents. Planned Parenthood and Obamacare you voted against. You're trying hard not to show it.
Play it till the end.
Oh, hi.
Welcome back. I would like to read, so if you've missed the 5 minutes ago or so, the race for Senate in Utah has been called for Mitt Romney. So we wanted to take a moment to thank Jenny Wilson, who was a challenger to Mitt Romney, for running an amazing campaign.
Yeah.
I can't imagine running a statewide race.
The energy that would take.
Right. She's put in a lot of effort. She's been working for a long time, and it's switched halfway through. So she started and she thought she was running against Orrin Hatch, and then she ended up running against Mitt Romney.
Yeah, she declared early. So this has been a long time coming, a lot of investment.
Right, yeah, and she's done a great job. So well done, Jenny. So claps in the comments.
Proud of her.
Yes, thank you, Jenny. All right.
So now we're talking remotely with March for Our Lives Utah. Oh, we're having a little bit of technical difficulties.
Are Doded Anna in there? I can't tell if anyone's talking to me or not.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes, so you are talking to me. I'm Lauren. Okay. This is Katie.
Hi.
And so are we talking to Janelle?
Yes.
Awesome. Hi. So thanks for talking to us tonight. We wanted to talk to you about the influence that young activists have had on this midterm elections. And you guys are kind of in a weird position where a lot of young activists are students who aren't old enough to vote yet. So what has that situation been like for you?
It's been a little bit frustrating, I guess, because, you're pushing for all these things and we have a lot of things that are really important to us, but we ourselves can't actually vote. I won't be 18 until August. But at the same time, it kind of shows how important it is to vote because of people who, aren't old enough to vote or people who, maybe aren't citizens who can't vote. And so for me, it's given me more motivation to get other people to vote.
And what has the reaction been in general from people in your life who are of voting age, so parents, guardians, even schoolmates and teachers, what has been the general reaction to this movement, March for Our Lives, particularly in Utah?
As far as, you know, the people in my life have been in our school, I live in Orem, which is, you know, very conservative parts of Utah. But overall, I've had a lot of support, you know, from people who want us to be involved, even if, you know, our opinions are different. My school has been supportive. I know we have a lot of faculty who, again, don't necessarily agree with what we're doing, but they've been super supportive. They posted about some of the stuff we've done on their Twitter account, and when we did the walkouts, you know, a month after the Parkland shooting, they were really supportive. They made sure that the students who participated wouldn't get in trouble, and for them, it's been really important that we, you know, have our right to voice our opinions. And it's been the same with my family and friends, where, you know, they've wanted to have these discussions, and that's been important for me too, you know, opening the conversation as far as you know, gun legislation goes.
That's awesome. That's really encouraging to hear.
Yeah. So
do you feel like the momentum that March for Our Lives has created is going to keep up in future years or future elections?
Yeah, I feel hopeful about, you know, the future and the work that March for Lives can do. Obviously, it's going to be a difficult battle, and, you know, there's going to be opposition to what, you know, what we're trying to do. But I feel like, you know, people, you know, the people who I've interacted with who, you know, have had maybe misunderstandings about our organization, once they've actually heard what we're trying to do, and you know, kind of actually talk to us, they've been a lot more supportive, and I think that momentum is going to, you know, keep building up as more and more people realize that we do need to do something, and that we do need to have these conversations and find a way to deal with a lot of the huge problems we're having with gun violence right now in this country.
Yeah. So do you want to run for office one day, or do your friends?
Yeah, I've definitely thought about it. I don't know necessarily if that's the path I'll go down, but I definitely have thought about it, or either that or just continuing with activism and, you know, doing, you know, just focusing on that. But yeah, I've definitely thought about it.
Awesome.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So, is there any, I know that you guys work pretty closely with the Utah legislature. You've been involved in the School Safety Commission. Is there any specific legislation that you're working on for 2019?
We have been predominantly focused on the election cycle right now. So I'm not the best person to ask about our plans moving forward as far as that goes. Since my big thing has been outreach and voter participation. So, but there's definitely, you know, as far as March for Lives and generally what we are pushing for, you know, more expensive background checks, 3-day waiting periods, red flag laws, those kinds of things that you hear mentioned, and actually getting those enacted at the very least at a state level.
Yeah. Well, as Kate was telling us a few minutes ago, voter turnout is definitely up. I mean, nationwide, but especially in Utah. So that's a credit to you. Well done on that.
Yes, thank you so much for all your work.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks for talking to us.
All right.
Bye, Janelle.
Bye.
Bye. Can we do a quick update?
Yes, quick update before we talk to Lee Castillo, who's running for Congressional District 1.
Great. So, early results are in so far from our statewide ballot propositions. Are you ready?
Yes.
Everything is polling ahead. So, constitutional amendments A, B, and C so far are ahead at 78% for Constitutional Amendment A, 75% for Constitutional Amendment B, and Amendment C is 61%. The non-binding opinion question right now, it looks like it's ahead at 59.88%. Prop 2, Prop 3, and Prop 4 are all ahead as well.
Wow.
So Prop 2 at this moment has 63.85% in favor and 36.15% against.
Wow.
So early results are looking good for all of the initiatives and the one question and the constitutional amendments. So that's pretty exciting. I mean, the voices of the people so far have been heard, and I've heard that we have a lot of the massive turnout that we're seeing as a result of these propositions.
Hi, Sheila. Hi. Can you hear me?
Are we on?
Oh. Hi. So now we're talking with Sheila, who is the campaign manager for Lee Castillo. Sheila, could you turn your phone sideways in landscape mode? Oh, hi, Lee. Great. We can't see you, but we can hear you.
Do we need to push the buttons to be able to see?
Okay. So we wanted to ask you a few questions. So you are a first-time candidate running for a congressional seat, which is a big undertaking. What inspired you to want to tackle that?
I got tired of the divisive rhetoric that was going on in Washington with this administration. That everybody was being targeted, people that are here in my community, women, Hispanics, trans, Muslims, prisoners of war, and veterans, and you name it, and it's targeted, and we had nobody standing up for the people. And so I want to go to Washington to answer that divisive rhetoric. For people and making sure and reassuring our community that somebody's out there looking out for them. And when you put people first in a time where care is targeted, Social Security and Medicare for our elderly. Thank you guys. Thank you so much. Thank you. We're having a deficit that is ballooning, and the American people are taking that burden on at the expense of the top 1% increasing their pocketbooks. So there's a lot of different reasons why, but I did definitely feel like I couldn't sleep well. I couldn't be well if I didn't do something about the state of the country.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people are feeling that way. So thank you for stepping up and
we're really grateful for your efforts.
Yeah, and doing your part to make your voice heard. What, if you don't mind me asking, what has surprised you most in your run for office?
Can you ask me after the election? Could vary. The answer would vary. I think that for now, just how much people have come together for just basic humanity. People want to be heard, and when you actually show up and you listen to them, so it's really awesome to see that the support that we get from not just Democrats but Republicans, the Green Party, and independents alike, all because I want to represent everybody, and I want to make sure that everybody has a voice here.
Great. Well, we have to go, but thank you so much for being with us, and good luck tonight. And
sorry, I have a little bit of a cold, so I'm a little nasally.
No, you're fine.
You're great.
You're fine. Thank you so much.
Oh, there they were.
All right, how are we doing?
We're doing good. So Kyle, one of our staff members, and Emily, one of our interns, have gone on over to the Republican Party headquarters to get a feel of the room there. They're going to be interviewing a couple of candidates there as well. So we're gonna jump over. Oh, but they're not there yet. So we'll be doing that soon.
we have a couple of election updates, national updates. So it looks like ABC News has projected that Ted Cruz will win the Senate in Texas. We're still waiting to hear more, but that's the projection again from ABC News. And it's also looking like Claire McCaskill may lose her seat in Missouri for the Senate. So this is all kind of what has been expected. The general kind of middle of the road projections for this election has been that Democrats would take the House and that Republicans would keep the Senate. And so that's what it's looking like now. Projections are going to change left and right. We're getting some preliminary reports from Utah. I think we've got like a little over 20% of precincts checking in, giving their election results, which is what we've been talking about now. Let's look at these.
And to sort of lay the groundwork on why we're in the situation that we're in, I am stealing this. This is a law professor of mine. His name's Brigham Daniels. He's a political junkie, and he's super great. And so these are a couple of tweets that he threw up tonight, sort of explaining the lay of the land what we're in right now. So he says out of the 26 Senate seats that are currently held by Democrats, 10 of them are in states that supported Trump. And so, while we have seen some in the GOP pitch the narrative that holding the majority is a win, it really isn't. And so, even if the GOP picks up a seat or two, it's a huge missed opportunity because of the Senate seats that are up for re-election, so many are held by Democrats. And the other reason that this election structurally favors Republicans is that because so many houses were controlled by the GOP in 2010, most states are gerrymandered to favor Republicans. Obviously, we're not saying that gerrymandering is a one-party issue. Democrats have done it in Maryland. But right now in the U.S., most states are gerrymandered to favor Republicans because of the Tea Party wave that happened in 2010. And that's the gerrymandering that you see in Utah right now.
Yeah. And completely unrelated, I'm being told that my 3-year-old son is waving at me on the TV at home. So, hi. Yes, I'm saying hi. Hi, Ulysses. That's my 3-year-old son. I would like to add a little bit about the Beto O'Rourke race. So I'm following 538, which is a great live blog that you can follow. They're a great website, lots of data-driven analysis. They were the ones who, I would say in 2016, gave Trump a chance at winning. Everybody says the polls were all wrong, and I thought that 538 did a great job in their predictions. So I want to read this for you real quick. There are some silver linings for the Democrat in Texas. Beto O'Rourke may have carried some House candidates over the line. So Lizzie Fletcher in the 7th District and Collie Allred in the 32nd District are both currently ahead of the GOP incumbents. So there's a lot more than sometimes meets the eye. So I think that's good news so far.
So we want to report on some really tight state-level races, some of our local races right now. So one that's really tight is State Senate District 8. And the ABU Ed Fund hosted a debate for this race a while ago. That's between Kathleen Reeby, who's the Democrat, and she's running against Brian Zender, who's a Republican. He was appointed to fill the seat left by Brian Chiuzawa. And those are pretty close right now, although Kathleen Reeby is in the lead. So now we'll hop over and talk to Kyle at the Republican Party headquarters. Hi, Kyle. Can you hear us?
We're waiting for it to connect. Is it working? There we go. There we go.
So Kyle's going to show us, he's going to be interviewing Ray Ward in just a minute. And he's showing us is he already talking to him? Okay. Showing us the lay of the land at the GOP party headquarters. Something that's really unique about Utah is low support for President Trump. So I'm interested in whether the crowd that's turned out tonight seems to be part of the MAGA crowd or whether they're Republican but not supportive of President Trump. I can hear, but it's really choppy. Kyle. Can you hear us?
I can hear you guys.
There we go.
Okay. Yeah, we can hear him. Awesome. And so Kyle is going to be talking to Representative Ray Ward. Ray Ward is the only Republican legislator who's endorsed Proposition 3, which is Medicaid expansion in Utah. And then he'll be talking to Nathan Evershed, who's a challenger for the Salt Lake County District Attorney seat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Kyle, go ahead and take it.
Oh, cool.
Okay, so we're back. All right, so let's see here. We're seeing more.
Oh, Kyle's talking to me about the feel of the room right now. Yeah, sorry.
It's good though. It's nice. They got a lot of room. We're still hot on the pursuit of our interviewees. We'll just walk around. Sorry, I'm sure this is not as exciting as what you guys are doing, but we're working with it. People walking by.
Okay. All right, so let's check back in here. Okay, so why don't you go ahead and give some more updates on the Senate 8 race?
Yeah, so the Senate 8 race, right now Kathleen Reavy is at 55% and Brian Zender is at 41%. We also have another close race is Senate District 12, and that's between Daniel Thatcher, who's the Republican incumbent, and Claire Collard, who's a Democratic challenger. Right now, Claire Collard has 50%, and Daniel Thatcher has 45%. So that one is looking really close. I'll be interested to see what happens there. Other close races, State House District 49. Robert Spendlove is the incumbent. He's a Republican, and he has 49%. Anthony Sedweeks is a Democratic challenger, first-time candidate, and he has 45%. So again, that's another really close one to watch, and we'll keep you updated on that. State House District 44 is the same thing. Close race. Andrew Stoddard is a Democratic challenger at 53%. Bruce Cutler is a Republican incumbent at 46%.
And nationally, real quick, look, there's some interesting information here. Just a fun fact: all of the party flips so far in the House have been by Democrats, and all of the party flips in the Senate have been by Republicans. So we're seeing more of what Lauren was talking about earlier. Hi, we're saying hi to everybody in the room. So it's quite interesting, and we're going to keep updating you as the night goes on. And of course, we are anxiously and excitedly refreshing our browsers, looking to see how things are coming in for the ballot propositions. Everything is the same as we said before. And if you're just tuning in, Constitutional Amendment A, B, and C are all ahead right now. I think it's with around 20% of precincts reporting in Utah. And Question 1 is polling ahead, and Prop 2, 3, and 4 are all ahead ahead as well. So that's, of course, medical cannabis, which is Proposition 2. Proposition 3 is Medicaid expansion, and Proposition 4 is fair redistricting. And kind of in a national sense, we are one of, I think, 3 or 4 states who have Medicaid expansion on the ballot right now. So if you're looking at this
red
in
states too.
Red states, right? So if you're looking at this in kind of like the larger scheme of things, of course, the ACA, also called Obamacare, tried to expand Medicaid, and then there was some backlash, and so now we're seeing a backlash to the backlash, where some of these red states are trying to go around the legislatures which have for one reason or another not accepted the full Medicaid expansion. And so it's going to be very interesting to see how it all turns out at the end of the night.
So some more interesting state house races. State House District 32, this was the district that was lost by 5 votes last election. And that was by Suzanne Harrison, who's challenging incumbent LaVara Christensen. And she lost by 5 votes in 2016. Now she is up 56%. Her challenger, Brad Bonham, it's an open seat, so they're both going for it. There's no incumbent, but Brad Bonham is at 41%. Another close race is State House District 38. Eric Hutchings is at 51%. Edgar Harwood, Democrat, is at 48%.
Great.
And right now, like Katie said earlier, the CD4 race is not going to be called tonight, so don't hold your breath. But right now, Ben McAdams, Democrat challenger, is at about 55%, and Mia Love is at 45%. So that's very early. There are lots of ballots that are still going to come in, but
yeah, and there have been instances in the past where because of the time that it takes for the votes to come in, especially now that we've had a lot of people registering day of at the polls. In the past, there have been scenarios in which candidates have won on election night, and then as the counts came in, they ended up ultimately losing. And so just keep that in mind as we watch the 4th Congressional District race. How are these other congressional districts looking?
Chase, have you texted Sandra? Okay, perfect. Just making sure.
All right, and so in Congressional District 1, which is Rob Bishop, he's the incumbent right now. He's leading with 85% of the vote. Let's see. And in CD2, which is the 2nd Congressional District, with Chris Stewart as the incumbent, Shireen Gorbani, who is the challenger and who we will be speaking with later tonight, is leading with 66.37% of the vote. So,
wow.
Yeah. But remember, this is a small percentage of precincts you're reporting, so I mean, these numbers could change drastically. We have no idea what this means. Basically, this is all of us just trying to, we've been waiting for 2 years to see what would happen, and we're all just taking whatever numbers we can find.
Yep. So.
All right, and CNN is saying Democrats are moving closer to control of the U.S. House, which is what has been largely predicted. And in terms of the U.S. Senate, it looks like the Republicans will hold the Senate, and it looks like the New York Times is saying Democrats have gained at least 10 of the 23 seats needed to take the House. So nothing new. It looks like we're going to be continuing in the direction that a lot of people were saying. I would like to say from 538 again, that's a blog I'm following. Somebody's saying they're talking about this time 2 years ago, which is of course the 2016 election, which was when Donald Trump was elected. And he said, more than anything, the election was reflecting how divided we are, urban, rural, rich, poor, different education levels. And given these preliminary results, it's looking like that gulf is continuing to grow, which is leads us to some interesting conversations that we can have with candidates and as an organization like ourselves. Like, how do we message to, how do we get outside of our own bubble? How do we make sure that we're messaging beyond our own experience, our own comfort level? And I think that some of the candidates that we will have on later tonight have done that really well, especially candidates like Shireen Gorbani, who has she's running in a very expansive district, right? The 2nd Congressional District is huge, and it runs from parts of Salt Lake City all the way down to southern Utah, and so I'll be interested to hear from her later tonight what kinds of things she's been hearing from candidates. Well, I guess from candidates too,
from
but
constituents.
From constituents,
voters,
yes, another one. You know, that's not an easy task, and so it's kind of it was interesting watching Beto O'Rourke. I think one of the reasons he captured everyone's imagination and minds and hearts is because not only is he incredibly well spoken, but his message has kind of stayed the same as he's gone and he's campaigned around Texas.
Yeah.
So it's going to be an interesting night, guys.
Yeah. Some updates on some Salt Lake County races. One of the most hotly contested races locally this year was the district attorney race between Sim Gill, the incumbent, and Nathan Evershed. Challenger Nathan is a prosecutor who works in the district attorney's office, so I can only imagine how uncomfortable that would be for everybody. So right now, Sim Gill, the incumbent, is up at 57%. Nathan Evershed has 42%. So,
and you know what's interesting about that is that's one of two actual Democrats in Salt Lake County who are being challenged by Republicans from within their office, because Sherry Swenson is also being challenged by someone from within her office and was in fact sued by the challenger and also Dan McKay over issues with ballots being mailed. It was dismissed, but nevertheless, it's just kind of an interesting factoid for your evening.
Yeah. Rosie Rivera is also up 60%. She is the current Salt Lake County Sheriff over challenger Justin Hoyle, who is at about 40%.
Cool. So very exciting things. Let's check. I want to see if we have any changes with these ballots. I doubt we do. Let's just check. There we go.
Well, let me just go right here.
Yeah, there's still, yep, everything's still the same. Everything, Prop 2, 3, and 4 are still, results are coming in ahead for all three of those. So in favor of Proposition 2, which is of course medical cannabis, Proposition 3, which is Medicaid expansion, and Prop 4, which is fair redistricting, and then Constitutional Amendment A, B, and C, and non-binding Question 1. Now, it would be interesting to see which precincts are actually reporting these results at this point. I've heard people in Utah, political insiders, if you will, say opinion Question 1 in particular, which is of course the education funding question, which is also kind of confusingly the gas tax question. And some people think that it won't pass. Are we good? All right. So now we have with us
Representative Sandra Hollins. Have a seat.
Thank you for joining us.
Oh, thank you all for having me.
You look fantastic.
Yeah,
thank
you look
you.
great.
Got my blue on.
Yeah.
Yes, that's so good. That's great.
So right now, you are up 73% in
Yes.
the polls. So how are you feeling?
I am feeling fantastic. My community has trusted me for another 2 years to work on issues that are important to them.
Great.
That's awesome. And so, sorry, I lost track of my questions.
Oh, that's okay.
Well, what are you looking for? So it looks like these propositions at this moment, and of course anything could change, so who knows. But right now, all three of the propositions, it looks like they're doing well. So that's Medicaid, medical cannabis, Medicaid expansion, and fair redistricting. So what are you looking for if all of these pass from your colleagues, particularly in the Republican Party, in terms of these three initiatives going forward? So I know there's a special session that's going to be happening one way or another to talk about Prop 2, but then again in the legislative session starting at the end of January, what can we expect?
Of course, Proposition 2, they're looking at amending that. There's already conversation around amending it. I must say I have some concern about Prop 2. The amendments going forward is the part where they are requiring background check for those individuals who want medical cannabis. In my view, I think that it's not fair to limit who has this medication, who this medication is available to. I think it should be made available to everyone, not only those individuals who pass the background check. And so I'm concerned about that. I'm happy about the redistricting passing. Looking forward to setting up boundaries that's going to be fair to everyone. And so looking forward to seeing that pass.
And to clarify, the background checks that you're talking about is part of the most updated Prop 2 compromise?
Yes, the most
updated. The compromise bill,
that was
I didn't mean to do
night.
air quotes. Yes, that was released last night.
Yes, yes, yes. The new one that we're going into special session for. Yes.
Okay. What we've been talking a little bit about messaging, you know, as we're seeing nationally, it's looking like the Democrats are, it's looking like they will take the House and that Republicans will keep the Senate. And it's looking more and more like we're seeing a continued divide in America in terms of urban, rural, race, gender, all of the, you know, economic status, all of these things. And so I'm curious, can you talk to us about where your district is, and then also what kind of messaging did you find that people in your district were most responsive to? Or what kinds of things are people saying to you is an issue?
You know, in my district, we are middle to lower class income people in my district. And the thing that spoke to them most was health care. They want to see health care because I have working class families, or those families that cannot afford to be able to take be able to go to the doctor. You know, those families that is just one paycheck away from living on the street or being homeless. And so a lot of what my district was looking for, they wanted to support and wanted somebody that was going to support the Medicaid expansion. And they also wanted someone that was going to support the medical cannabis. A lot of my constituents, I know they went out based on that. That's one of the main issues that brought them out. And so that's what we spoke to during our campaign. I always tell my constituents, you know, I'm in this seat because you placed me here, and I need to hear from you, and I want to hear from you. I want to know what you believe in and what you support and what are your values, and because I'm here to represent that.
That's great. Yeah, healthcare seems to be, I mean, when Bernie Sanders kind of came to the stage, I mean, he's been in office for forever, but when he really came to the national eye, he really rose on a message of healthcare.
Absolutely.
And I mean, that got me to the polls, right?
Absolutely.
I think that's something that we're seeing everywhere, and so thank you for doing the work that you're doing.
Absolutely. You know, a lot of people don't know, but in 2016, my daughter got sick. And we were back and forth to the doctor's office trying to figure out what was wrong with her, but only because I'm privileged to have health insurance. I was able to get her the help she needed. I realized that everybody's not in my position, and every parent is not in my position, and so it is. The way I look at it, I should not be privileged to health care and my neighbor is not. It's not right. And so that is something that I fought for, and it's something that I will continue to fight for.
So what are your legislative priorities this coming session?
Wow. I'm going to look at legislation around homeless youth this upcoming session. I've been telling everybody that a lot of my focus right now is on our really young people and our senior citizens. I have a concern with the amount of our seniors who are homeless and living on the street, and I also have a concern for a number of young people. And so I'm going to be looking at legislation that's going to be pushing that this upcoming session. I'm also going to be looking at what in my district I can be doing or trying to help fund over in that area. I got one project that I'm possibly looking at. I don't want to mention it yet, but that I'm possibly looking at supporting this upcoming session.
That's a good tease. All right, you have the stage here.
Everything that you do. Representative Hollins, thank you so much for chatting with us.
Thank you all for having me.
Always a pleasure.
It's been a delight.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Well, good luck.
Good luck and congratulations.
I would like to do yes. Before we have our next guest on, I would like to give a quick kind of update nationally. Amendment 4, which passed in Florida earlier tonight, would restore voting rights to felons and would affect 1 million people in Florida.
That passed?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So good job, Florida.
We're proud of you.
Good job, Florida! All right, our next guest is here and waiting in the wings. Do you want to
Yes. Please welcome Derek Kitchen. Oh, and he's got his I voted sticker on.
I voted
Good for
today,
you.
actually.
Did you vote for yourself?
I did.
That's great.
And if you didn't, why?
Yeah.
How long was your line?
It wasn't long at all, actually.
That's
So I went to
great.
Trolley Square. All right, so the real story on my ballot, I don't know how much time I have here, but my mail-in ballot sat on my desk for 2.5, 3 weeks. And so I realized I just have such an emotional attachment to going on election day. So I went today to Trolley Square, and there was no line. It was full at all times, but people were cycled in and out really quickly, so it was quick.
Well,
That's
we're getting
great.
reports of lines up to 3 hours long in places like
That's mostly Utah County.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Utah County. So
Yeah.
it's cold, and people are staying in those lines. So good job for everybody.
I
who
think
stayed
the
in line.
Utah County clerk probably needs some oversight at some point.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's important to make sure that everybody has an opportunity. I mean, we're all entitled to having a quick process to voting, right? I mean, if it's longer than an hour wait, then I feel like there's an issue there. But
Right,
yeah.
right, yeah.
Yeah, and not everybody can leave
Yeah.
for a long time because in the U.S. Election Day is
Yeah.
not a federal holiday, so
Absolutely.
it presents additional challenges.
Utah
to people.
law does permit or require employers to allow up to 2 hours. Is that right? For voting? I think there's some.
I'm not sure.
But anyway, yeah, I agree with you. It's really critical.
Well, that's great. I didn't know about that, so I'm happy to hear. So you are up 70%,
Yes.
77% right now. So I imagine you're feeling pretty good.
I feel great.
That's good.
Yeah.
And you are replacing Jim DeBacchus, who's a longtime famous progressive senator in Utah. So what will your priorities be this legislative session? Are you inheriting any bills? Are you working on your own stuff?
Okay, so my priorities at the high level are always going to be focused on growth-related matters. So I am coming in as the youngest state senator. I'm 30 years old. I'm more aligned with the general demographics of the state of Utah than any other senator. So growth and the future of the state of Utah are really critical to me. So I'm going to be focused primarily on housing issues, on air quality, on watershed management, on early childhood education, all of these long-term growth-related matters. And so I'm currently working with a few folks on some housing bills. There's a couple of these subcommittees that are currently working on some recommendations for housing, and so I'm really eager to jump into that. I've sort of waited in the wings until election night before committing to anything, but now that the results are looking really solid, I'm really eager to dive into housing primarily.
That's
awesome.
excellent.
Yeah.
Thank you. I mean, everybody who's watching knows, even if not, on the front of it, they know, instinctually, that there is a housing, growing housing crisis in Utah.
Absolutely.
And it affects not just those of us who can pay our rent, but those of us who are on the brink of, Representative Hollins was saying earlier, one paycheck away, or one healthcare bill away from losing their housing. I mean, we're all kind of living in that space, and so to have legislative attention on that from someone who is experiencing it, who is young, who is more, we're one of the youngest states, if not the youngest state in the nation. So to have somebody representing that voice is invaluable.
And I think we have to have a global view of housing as well, because of course we're talking about deeply affordable housing for those who are exiting homelessness or maybe at risk of slipping into homelessness.
Yeah.
But honestly, affordable housing is important for people who are empty nesters, for people who are entering retirement, for students or new families. This is critical at all levels of income. So if you're spending more than 30% of your income on housing, you're not living in an affordable place.
Right.
So this impacts everybody at all levels of income.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's so true. And as you've been talking to people, is that what you've been hearing is their most important priority?
Yeah, so even folks who are maybe selling a home and looking to either upgrade or relocate, or maybe they've had some children leave their house, so they're looking to downgrade. It's been hard for people to just find a unit that fits their needs.
Yeah.
We have such a tight housing market that it comes down to basic supply and demand economics. We just need to have more units on the market for people to choose from at all levels.
Great. Well, Derek Kitchen, thanks so much for stopping by and talking to us.
My pleasure. I didn't mean to absorb it all with housing, but I appreciate the time.
We're excited.
Thank you very
for all the
much.
stuff you'll do.
Thank you very much. See ya.
Great.
All right, I have a quick national. I'm just going to be reading you guys stuff as it pops up to the top of 538. Okay, some state legislative news, not from Utah, but from our neighboring state. Democrats appear to have flipped the Colorado State Senate. They have already won the governorship, and the state house was never in question. So it looks like that's the second state government trifecta that Democrats have picked up tonight after Illinois. So state level government is something that is incredibly important. Oftentimes we're so attracted by the shiny federal races, which are super important, obviously, but it cannot be overstated the importance of local races, which is a great segue into our next guest.
Yeah. Well, and if you want, and also too, if you want strong federal candidates, you need people with experience, and you need, so if you want progressive candidates to represent you at the national level, you need to first get progressive candidates to represent you in your city, in your county, in your state. And so right now we're going to talk to another progressive candidate, Jen Daly Provost.
Come on down.
So come on down.
Yeah.
Hi, Jen. How are you?
I'm great. I'm in a fabulous mood.
That's great.
Have you been looking at your numbers?
Well, my numbers and a lot of other people's numbers.
Yeah.
There's a lot of great things going on.
Right now you are at 77%. So
pretty happy about that.
Yeah. Well, I can take that. That's great. So even though you're winning by a landslide now, you faced the toughest Democratic primary in the state.
Yes.
Crowded field.
Yeah.
And it was really close.
Only ever 4-person primary in the state of Utah.
Wow.
Yep, it's unprecedented, which is a great thing because of the signature gathering option for candidates. It means that more people have the opportunity to get on the ballot. I gathered signatures. I think I actually attribute part of my success in the general to my ability to start gathering signatures in January, because I've been talking to voters since January, almost without, with a few breaks, and people really, really care. They really love it when you know that the candidates care about what they think and about meeting them in person and having those interactions, and I've loved knocking doors. We knocked over 11,000 doors.
Wow.
Between January and
in the cold months.
Yeah.
Wow.
Which was better than the hot months.
Really?
Yeah.
Because then at least you can work up a sweat.
It was 100 degrees in late June.
Wow.
So as you've been talking to people, what are you hearing? What's the most important issue?
To constituents?
Yes.
Healthcare is huge. The fact that I've spent 5 years working on Medicaid expansion has resonated with so many voters, because even though it's a district that, relative to the rest of the state, has higher rates of insurance coverage, they still recognize what a huge disadvantage our state is in if we don't cover, everybody, give everybody the opportunity to be healthy. Mm-hmm. Air quality is always a top issue, especially for somebody like me who's raising small children in this state, and knowing the health effects that the poor air quality has on kids' abilities to be healthy into adulthood and later in life. And LGBTQIA+ actually was one of my most consistent talking points with people, just making sure that everybody has an opportunity to be their authentic selves and to live a full, healthy life.
Yeah.
And I guess education, always the perennial issue. I'm watching the question 1. The counts in the county aren't looking good, and I'm really quite devastated about voters opting not to support education funding. So that's going to be a big problem at the legislature.
Yeah. So, like you said, you've been working as an advocate for years on Capitol Hill in terms of affordable health care. What will change? Will anything change in your approach now that you're have more of a seat at the table as a legislator?
And I'm so glad you said that, seat at the table. Because we Democrats have been accused of not having a seat at the table. And we've seen from a lot of good Democrats that we've got a powerful voice in the state, and I'm excited to do that. So one of the things that comes up when I'm talking with people about my goals for being at the Capitol is that when the ballot initiatives pass, and I think that they all will, as legislators we've got to protect those, because we already know that there are hostile forces out there that are looking to gut those or rescind them altogether, Medicaid expansion specifically. And so we need to make sure that we are loud and persistent and really build a lot of coalitions across the aisle to make sure that the spirit of those ballot initiatives stays intact in this year and in the coming sessions, that those don't get dismantled, because a lot of legislators are already hostile to the ballot initiative route. But we know that the public is not happy with what has been coming out of the legislature, which is why we had so many ballot initiatives despite the very high bar that had to be cleared.
Right.
And so for them to turn around and say, I don't really care what the voters are saying, is something that we have to be really persistent about and make sure we build coalitions, that we moderate the activity from the people that are on the fringes of that kind of behavior, to make sure that we keep all of the middle ground legislators committed to keeping the spirit of those ballot initiatives intact.
Yeah. One other question we have for you. So in the history of the Utah legislature as a whole, Utah has only had 42 female legislators ever.
Really?
Yes.
I didn't know that.
I found that out last
knew
night
it was
as I was
low,
researching.
but holy cow.
Yeah. So what can we do as a state to elect more women to office?
So for me, the biggest factor was my incredible mentor, which was Rebecca Chavez Hauk. And she, when I've talked to her about that, she said she learned that from Jen Seelig. And, you know, recognizing how important it is that chain of mentoring and really making sure that when women achieve certain, you know, whatever accomplishment it is, if it's being elected or getting a CEO job or a CFO job or whatever, that it's seen as an opportunity to encourage other women leaders and to really demonstrate that you're vested in other people's success. You know, I think that sometimes we get trapped in this mindset, and I think it's unconscious, but sometimes people get trapped in this mindset that somebody else's success will somehow diminish your own success. And I think as women, we're definitely doing a good job of overcoming that. But you know, as I see so many amazing millennial women getting really involved and really passionate and are just kicking butt and being organized and hardworking and smart and educating them, so, you know, making sure they understand all the issues, and it's not, you know, what they're doing is not just a visceral reaction. You know, women aren't going out and marching because something feels icky. They're marching because they see the injustice and they see a path toward a better future. And I've had a huge amount of gratification to see how many women are excited to come and work with me, you know, up on the Hill, and to work with me on projects. And so, you know, being the recipient of an amazing mentor in Rebecca, and, you know, people like Jen Seelig and Karen Kwan, and even Becky Edwards, who's a retiring Republican from Davis County, I'm really looking forward to taking the opportunity to encourage other women leaders going forward. And I think that it's not the silver bullet, but it will definitely help.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So,
wow.
That's
well,
all
thank you
do.
for all of your work. Thank you for your years of your
thank you for your work,
everything that you do up there on the Hill. And we've seen you up there in the past, and I'm sure now that we will definitely see you there in the future. That's excellent.
I look forward to it, and thank you to ABU for everything that you guys do. And certainly in this election cycle, I've really, really appreciated your willingness and ability to really call out bad behavior, because I think that too often that bad behavior goes unchecked, and that becomes a self-perpetuating cycle. So thank you.
Of course, thank you.
You guys are amazing.
You're welcome. Thank you. Okay.
All right, real quick interjection. It looks like ABC is projecting that Democrats are going to win the House, and I'm being told that I have to put in my headphones. Who's on the line? It's Kyle with...
Oh, so Kyle is showing us, so he showed us the lay of the GOP party earlier, and now he's at the Democratic headquarters party. Yes, we can hear you.
Everyone's really excited and anticipation. It's a good time on the slides. Should we walk through the crowd? Let's walk through the crowd. Hey, what's up, dude? Yeah. 5 million people watching you. Everyone is by the alcohol. Hey guys, how's it going? Partying over here. Way more fun than the GOP party I ever worked
Yeah. All right, Kyle, thank you so much. We are going to go back. We have our next guest with us. All right.
Okay, thanks, Kyle. So now we have Kathleen Reby, who is running in Senate District 8. And right now, let me pull up the stats from that race. Right now, she is up at almost 56%. So, hi.
Are you feeling
Hi,
good?
how are you feeling?
Feeling really great.
That's excellent.
Yeah, things are looking awesome. It's been a great race, and it was nice to run against a really kind, compassionate candidate who we had a really kind race, so it was really nice.
Yeah.
At the debate that you guys had, it was so nice. It almost wasn't a debate. It was so friendly and really cordial. So it's nice to see that in politics.
It is, especially today's day and age when it's not as nice and kind as it could be.
Yeah.
We both were really kind to each other, so I appreciated that race.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
That's
what
awesome.
has your ground game been like? What is how many doors have you knocked? I don't know if you know that number off the top of your head.
I think we knocked about 15,000 doors. The person that did most of the
Wow.
door knocking is standing right there. She helped me tremendously. Her name is Shawnee, so thanks, Shawnee. And,
Good job, Shawnee. Thanks.
We knocked on tons of doors. We started in June, and we just tried to knock on every door we could. And we sent out flyers, and we tried to overlap different types of focus groups so that we were telling people exactly where we stood.
Great. And what kind of things were you hearing at the door? I mean, you know, a part of your job as a candidate as you're knocking doors is to tell them who you are. But what were people saying to you about who they are? What kinds of things are they looking for in a state senator?
Well, you know, that was like really the most exciting part. People really wanted to talk to you and tell you what they felt. And so it was nice to take the time because we started so early and really listen. Depending on where I was, there were different conversations. Some people really were concerned about healthcare, and they had a story about somebody who had really struggled with a lack of healthcare. Up by Cottonwood Heights, by the canyons, people were really concerned about the infrastructure problem up there. In Midvale, they were concerned about infrastructure too. There's a lot of infrastructure worries about the valley growing really fast and there not being enough resources to make traffic and the flow of traffic better.
Yeah, wow. And so now you're on the state school board?
I am on the state school board.
And so do you have legislative priorities should you win, which it looks like it's going to go that way,
Leaning
right?
that way.
Yeah.
So if that happens, are your legislative priorities obviously probably going to be some infrastructure questions that you'll bring up, but also are you going to be dealing with education in any way? And do you see any areas of education that we can improve upon and that you could improve upon in the state senate?
Yes, I do. I would love to see us start to focus on the people that really need us the most. When we look at the growth that Utah has made, we've made great gains K through 3 and pre-K, but we aren't making gains with ELLs and English language learners and refugees. So I'd like to see us focus there because we really need to make sure that these people are coming up, these demographics are reaching the same opportunities that we are. And if we all can't rise, we're just not going to do better. So I think we really need to work on targeting, using data-driven techniques, because we know exactly what's happening. We just need to start putting the resources to those things.
Wow, yeah. And we're going to ask you the same question that we've just asked Jen Daly Provost, who looks like she's going to win House District 24, which is excellent. So
it's the hair.
It's the hair. It's the redheads.
Yes. Yeah. You should run.
She should, actually. She'd be great.
And I'm going to announce that here. Just kidding. In the history of the state, House, and Senate, Utah has only had 42 female legislators ever.
Wow.
So what do we need to do to get more women in office? And I'm going to add to that question, why is it important that we have more women in office?
You know, we have seen when they did those microloans in other countries that when we support women, we support our communities. Women give back to their communities. They are looking to make sure that everyone is safe and secure. I think that's part of it. I have done a lot of non-traditional jobs, and so I was like a firefighter and a truck driver and a rugby player, and I think those things help me be assertive. So we really need to help our women in our lives realize that we can be assertive, we can stand up for what we want, and we need to be involved in the game. It's really important that we get people running. I'm a school teacher. You're like, well, how do you do that? I'm like, I have to. I cannot not do this. We have to step up. You know, it's not easy. People are like, I'm busy. Everybody's busy, but it's important. The house is on fire. We got to rush in. We got to help our fellow community people. So just keep telling people, We got to run.
Keep getting involved. Keep
Yep.
showing up. I mean, that's like the easy.
That's
That's
half
like
the battle.
Yeah, it really is
Showing
just
up.
showing up.
If you go to school board meetings, local or state, if you go to your community meetings, if you go to your city council meetings, you will be so engaged and you'll be so driven to start getting involved more. And you don't have to do anything, you just have to sit there and listen, and you'll start to feel like I need to do something more. So just start attending meetings and meet your local people.
I love that advice to start with listening.
Yeah.
Before acting.
I go to meetings and I'm the only person that's elected that's not sitting behind the big table, and I'm like, where are all the other people? We should all be sitting here listening to our community members. So it's been really fun. I really like meetings. I don't know what's wrong with me, so I think this is the perfect thing for me. I love meetings. I can't get enough of them.
That's hilarious.
That's funny.
If I can ask one last question, it's looking pretty good for the 3 propositions, which is great.
Yes.
What are you going to be looking for should you get to the state senate in terms of your fellow colleagues, particularly those who have spoken up against any one of the 3 propositions? What are you looking for in terms of are they going to be speaking out against them? Are they going to be trying to undercut them? And how can we? What can you do and what can we do if such a thing occurs?
I think we really need to contact our legislators still and keep contacting them. I do think that they're going to try to erode the substance of those propositions. I will not. I believe that what has happened right now is the most ineffective government we can have. We have not been heard, and it's caused record numbers of people to run. And I think that people think it's somebody else that runs, but it's not. It's you. Everybody needs to get involved. We need to step up. We need to have our voice heard, because it's really our government. It's our community. It's our children. It's our healthcare. It's our infrastructure. We need to be responsible for it.
Yeah. One of the interesting things for me, being, I mean, in terms, relatively new to politics in the past number of years, is that there seems to be this disconnect with people between politics and real life. People say, oh, well, that's just politics. I don't involve myself in politics. But politics involves our lives every single day.
Yeah.
Whether or not we know it is a different matter. How can we get more engaged? Although I will say that with the caveat that it looks like Utah is making record number of, we've had record numbers of ballots cast, which is excellent. So how can we continue that? How can we encourage our fellow Utahns to show up to the legislative session and kind of lobby your legislator, I guess?
I think when we get up to the actual legislative session, it's a little too much too fast. I think we really need to be reaching out to our constituents, and we really need to be reaching out to our representatives. It's not somebody else's job. It's everything is affecting your life every day. And I was working with a teacher one time, and she's like, oh, I just want to teach and not, be involved in this. I'm like, are you kidding me? Politics pays your salary. Politics sits the kids in your classroom. Politics gives you people to help you. I said, that train has left years ago, and we're trying to chase after it.
Right.
It is, everything's political, and if you don't think so, then you really need to get better involved, because one meeting and you're going to understand how much money comes out of these things, how many resources come out of these things, how it's not working for the people in your neighborhood, and who wants to see your neighborhood struggling,
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks so much for having me.
Yes, good luck tonight.
And next election cycle, redheads, they really are.
Redheads will take over the world.
Yes,
that's right.
we will.
We're only 10% of, 10% of the population? But
I think 1%.
We are a small segment of the population, and yet we persist.
The few and the mighty.
Yes.
Thanks. Have a great night. Thank you again.
All right, the U.S. House has been called for the Democrats. Well done. And it looks like the Senate is not officially called. Has it been officially called for the Republicans, Chase? Yeah.
Senate, yes.
Yeah, okay, so the Democrats have taken the House and Republicans have kept the Senate. So that certainly it's going to make things interesting, isn't it?
Yeah.
And exciting as we continue forward.
An update on propositions. All of our propositions are still ahead. The non-binding opinion question, which was raising money for school funding through a gas tax, about 65% of people have voted against. So that one does not look like it will pass. I mean, it's not like a pass-fail, but the voters are saying no on that one.
All right, so now let's talk about the closest congressional race in Utah, possibly one of the closest races in the state, which is the 4th Congressional District race, which is the race, of course, between Representative Mia Love, who is the incumbent and was first elected in 2014, against Salt Lake County Mayor Ben McAdams. At this moment in time, with I'm not sure how many precincts in Utah reporting, Ben is leading with 53, almost 54% of the vote. So this one's going to be a nail biter as we continue to watch it. Again, the likelihood is that we will not know the results of the 4th Congressional District race at least until Friday, maybe till Tuesday, maybe even a couple of weeks. We have a lot of provisional ballots that were cast. There are a couple of precincts where they had, I think half of the votes cast were from provisional ballots. And so it's a great day for democracy. It's a great day for getting people to vote. It's a rough day if you want to know the results of very tight elections, such as in the 4th Congressional District. But the good news is, if you're rooting for the Democrats, if you're rooting for progressives, it looks like they've taken the House. So that's that. We'll keep updating you as we know.
In Congressional District 2, so far the total reporting numbers are still very low. But right now, Chris Stewart and Shireen Ghorbani are about even. He is at 48% and she is at 47%. So,
and there's a Libertarian candidate there who is peeling off about 4% of the votes.
That's right.
So we'll keep updating you as we know.
So now we are delighted to talk to Darlene McDonald. Come on
Welcome.
down.
Speaking of the 4th Congressional District.
Yeah. So Darlene ran in the Democratic primary.
Yes. Well, not the primary.
She ran a convention. Yes. Excuse me.
And you had a number of challengers in that race.
Yes.
Were there 4, 5?
There were, I think, 5 of us total, but at the end it ended up being 4 of us. One young lady, she dropped out just like the morning of convention.
There were tons of candidates. Like at any given moment, there were tons of candidates in that race.
Yeah. So first off, you are not the current candidate for CD4, but do you have any future plans to run for office?
Not tonight.
Okay. No one else is tonight?
I am looking at the screen tonight and cheering for Ben and Shireen and just all of the Democrats across the board. And I'm just hoping for a Democratic wave. So that's where I'm at.
Okay. That's good.
And also, it's worth noting that you also ran for county council for Salt Lake County Council 4.
Also a District 4.
Right. You and those 4s.
I love those 4s.
So every District 4 that comes up just as if you're running.
Watch out.
So 2018 has been a record-setting year. Record numbers of women have run. Record numbers of women of color have run. So what was your experience? What did you learn as a first-time candidate?
How freaking awesome and motivated everyone are. I had not expected that. After the results of 2016, I thought I was alone. I thought, how could this have happened? Because it happened.
Yeah.
And then, but once I started running and meeting wonderful people, like Katie here, I did not feel alone anymore. And that was the most wonderful thing about running. I met so many wonderful, passionate, engaged people who care about this country, care about the future of this country, really want to see democracy remain intact, and care about the future of their children. That has been the best thing about running for office, is just the wonderful people I've met along the way.
And so as you were talking to people, getting to know voters and constituents in your district, what were you hearing from people? What were their biggest concerns?
As far as issues is concerned, it was definitely healthcare. And that was one of my biggest issues as well. But healthcare was big. And just the state of our country and what Trumpism was doing to our country. People were legitimately afraid. I know that after the election, it was really hard to just look at people that you did not know and not question how they really felt about you based on the result of that election. Because it's like, are you a friend or a foe? Did you vote for him or did you not? And you almost wanted to ask people that before you even engaged in a conversation with them. Because then you would know, okay, how do you really feel about me? Because how you really feel about me was determined by that vote.
And that's an interesting point, because the 2016 election, I would say more than any past election, felt like a reflection of values.
Yes.
More than just a vote for or against a particular candidate.
Exactly. And for a lot of people, there was no separation of that. You know, you walk the walk, you talk the talk. Mm-hmm. And there was no cognitive dissonance in that, and your vote reflect that value. Like, if you really care about your neighbor, your vote reflected that. If you really cared about the direction of the country, your vote reflected that. But 2016 taught us something, it showed us something very different, that people were willing to toss their values aside for an agenda. And that has been really difficult to wrap my head around, even as I watch the numbers and the polls come in tonight. Like, the future of the country versus an agenda. And what are people going to choose? And we're hoping that people choose the right way. You know, just vote for the country. You know, and that regardless of the party. Vote your conscience, vote for the country. And that's, you know, as we watch the polls come in, are they going to do that?
Yeah. Thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you.
Good luck as you watch the television, right?
Yes.
And just a quick update, of course, Mitt Romney has won for the Senate. Mitt Romney has won for the Senate in Utah, and they're calling it now for Rob Bishop for the 1st Congressional District. So thank you to Lee Castillo, who we spoke with earlier today, for running that campaign. It's a huge district, and you did a great job. Thank you so much.
And thanks to Eric Eliason.
As well. Yeah, the United Utah Party candidate. Great.
Okay, now we're going to sit down with Representative Angela Romero, who is representative in our state house. Hi.
Everyone's wearing blue.
How are
looking
you?
Great.
Yeah. Well, blue is the color of
I
the
know,
Democratic
they're
Party.
representing the team.
Is that why it's called the blue wave?
I had this fabulous red dress, and I just said no. I put it back in the closet. Like,
don't jinx it.
Not today.
Not today.
So as we think about, so in Utah, you have a lot of people, and I think especially a lot of women, who identify as moderates. And so how would you message progressive issues to people who might actually feel the same as you, but like to see themselves as more centrist or moderate?
Well, I've done this effectively at the legislature with not women, with men. And really what I talk about it is from a human perspective and a people perspective, and how it impacts all of us as a community as a whole. And so for me, it's really been about relating personal stories and identifying people in people's lives that can connect with the Me Too movement. And we always say start by believing, and we always say not start by ending, but it's start by believing. And so I think for the most part, we've been able to get a lot of people to support our efforts on sexual assault and domestic violence, because we've reframed it, and we're taking it from a trauma-centric perspective versus just what people would say a he said, she said perspective. We're just educating people on what trauma is and how people experience trauma.
Yeah. Do you feel like the Me Too movement has influenced the way that your colleagues respond to your legislation? A lot of your work is focused on survivors of sexual assault.
Not necessarily. I think it started when I passed HB 286, was the Child Sex Abuse Preventive Education Bill. And some of my colleagues actually announced that they were child sex abuse survivors. And then many of their partners also disclosed to their spouses that they were also child sex abuse survivors. So I thought that that's kind of what started the conversation around this issue.
Oh, wow.
And I really think about it as a local issue with Deandra Brown and the 5 Browns, and with Elizabeth Smart talking about the issue. So I think that's a reason why people are more open to talking about sexual assault and child sex abuse, because it's happening in their own home, and there's people that are high profile that have shared their experience. So I could say Me Too does play a role, but I think a larger picture when you're looking at Utah is the personal stories about people that actually live here in Utah that have high profile names.
So it's the local stories and local experiences that bring it home for a community.
Because people in Utah think that like Utah is unique, and maybe it is, and so it's the Utah way. And I think the way I've always presented my legislation is about Utah and how it impacts Utah and Utah families.
Yeah, great. Well, thank you so much for joining us tonight. And good luck as we watch the results come in.
Yeah, well, we're doing really well. And I think we might pick up 2 or 3 seats.
Yeah, great.
So.
And right now, of course, the 2nd Congressional District, Shireen, is holding neck and neck with Chris Stewart, which is incredibly interesting.
She's slaying
to watch.
it. And Shireen has done a wonderful job in just connecting to people. And I think that's what a lot of times when people talk about elected officials, I think many times we're out of touch with people. And Shireen has brought a new, fresh voice and has energized the base.
Yeah, she has. Shireen has done a great job. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
All right. Who's next?
We have a call with, Lonnie Scott from Progress Now National. Is that on? No?
Lonnie, can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you.
There we go.
Hi, Lonnie. Thanks so much for chatting with us. So Lonnie works for Progress Now National. So how has the progressive movement gained steam this election?
Well, I think what we're seeing is that people were hungry for progressive policies and certainly for progressive issues. And you are seeing a sea change of people who are rejecting bigotry and racism and a lot of the really negative types of environment that we've had since the 2016 election.
Great. And what has this effect had, or what's been the effect on the Democratic Party as a whole?
Well, I think that the Democrats have moved to a more progressive place, and I think that that is the result of organizations like yours, and certainly like the Progress Now sister affiliates around the country, pushing more progressive policies. We saw for a while in the years previous that progressive policies were winning even when Democratic candidates were not. So now I think you're starting to see Democratic candidates actually adopting progressive policy platforms and pushing those things forward. And it's been a winning environment. Here in Michigan, we just flipped a U.S. House seat and our governor's mansion, all to progressive champions. We've seen progressives win, talking about issues like health care for everyone, better education, fixing our infrastructure. And I think that it's the work of progressive organizations that has truly done that and made the Democratic Party and Democrats take notice that it's a winning combination and to talk about these issues, then to also lead on them and get them done.
Yeah. And so Democrats have now taken the House, Republicans have maintained hold on the Senate. So what do you think we can expect from this new Congress?
Well, I think that the Democrats in the House are going to have to step up. I think the people of the country have spoken that, you know, this total Republican control was not something that was working for our country. And I think that it is the folks who were elected, by and large, in a lot of these districts, ran on progressive platforms to protect people with pre-existing conditions, to fight for health care for everyone. And I think that it is going to be on the House Democrats to make sure that they are pushing those progressive policies and pushing the Senate and the White House towards more progressive policies nationwide.
What have you been seeing in Michigan? What's the top issue that people are most concerned about?
Our governor actually ran on a platform to fix the damn roads. That was her exact campaign promise. In Michigan, we have some of the worst roads in the country, but we also saw people were concerned about the environment. We have a large amount of the world's fresh water surrounding Michigan, and yet all across our state, we have had PFAS contamination from business being able to contaminate and never have to clean up their mess. And so people were interested in making sure that we had clean drinking water. It really is back to the basics. It's about providing the services that government should be providing to the citizens. And so the message here was pretty clear. We have seen victories up and down the ballot today after 8 years of total Republican control in Michigan, that, you know, they want people who are going to focus on the priorities: education, the environment, and our infrastructure.
So in your opinion, as we're looking forward to 2020, what's a winning positive message, you know, we talk about people wanting to be for something rather than just simply against something. So what's a winning message that progressives can take hold of and run with going forward?
I think that progressives have to harness all of the policies that they've already been talking about. I think it's really important for them to continue to talk about healthcare. We've seen that be a deciding factor in a lot of these races, and frankly, we know that towards the end of the race, they were, the other side was trying to claim that they were still for protecting pre-existing conditions. So we saw that it moved them running for things that are going to benefit real people as opposed to just corporations. So making sure that we are out there fighting every day for working people with policies that help them have affordable, quality health care, that we have education for everyone, regardless of where they live, how much money they make. These are the things that are important to people. And I think that those are the things that we have to focus on and that we have to talk about. And we have to do that in a positive way. I think, the victories that are happening today are all campaigns who took a positive approach that talked about what they were going to do, how they were going to help people, as opposed to just trying to tear their opponents down. And I think that people have lived through 2 years of negativity and racism and bigotry, and they were ready for that positive aspirational message.
Okay, well, Lonnie, thank you so much for talking to us. We really appreciate it, and good luck in Michigan.
Thank you.
No problem.
All right, do we want to do a quick update?
Yes.
All right. So Nicole Nixon, who with KUER, I apologize, just tweeted, it's looking like Democrats will pick up at least 3 seats in the Utah legislature, maybe 4. And those seats are, of course, Kathleen Reeve, who we just spoke with, Suzanne Harrison, whom we have spoken about before. She lost the election in 2016 by 5 votes. All right, and then possibly Andrew Stoddard, and then last but not least, Claire Collard. So that's very exciting. Well done.
Yeah, those are races to watch.
Okay, let's keep on going. So let's look nationally. Again, if you missed it, it's looking, so the Democrats have taken the House of Representatives and Republicans have held the Senate, which was largely expected. This is not a surprise. This was largely expected. It's looking like there are a couple of state legislatures. I think there's 2, Colorado and Illinois, that the Democrats have taken as well. And so on the whole, we tend to look at all the federal seats and go, oh, okay, well, the Democrats didn't take this House, the progressives didn't take the Senate, rather, I'm sorry. But there are a lot of local, we're talking about the importance of local seats, which is why we are speaking with so many local candidates, right? Because it's not just that it affects your day-to-day, right? It's the whole, who picks up, all you care about is who picks up the garbage and the cost of your healthcare, stuff that's local. But also it creates a bench of progressive candidates as they continue on, right? So the importance of electing people who have experience, who have been in state legislative positions, or frankly, this is not tonight, but even have held positions on boards and commissions, which is, it's a recommendation process, it's not an election process. But, doing things for your local neighborhood or your city school board or your state school board or whatever it is, the importance of these races cannot be overstated. It's incredibly important to have quality candidates to go, to move on up in the seats, to move on up.
And in a lot of ways, the elected officials who have the biggest impact on your life are your local officials.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I do want to give another national update. Amendment Y and Amendment Z in Colorado have passed, which will create an independent redistricting commission for both the congressional map and the state legislative map. So the version that we have here in Utah is, of course, Proposition 4. It's all rolled into one. But it would create an independent redistricting commission to redraw the lines, which is so incredibly important. Making sure that politicians can't draw their own districts and make themselves, give themselves a safe seat is incredibly important.
I don't know about you, but I'm already coming up with fantasy picks on who I think should be on the commission.
Should we have a fantasy pick for that 7-person commission? I think that's ABU's next plan. Okay, so, and of course...
And in a minute, we'll be talking with Matt Lyon, who is a former... Nope, we won't. Oh, we'll be talking with Ed Espinoza, who is the executive director of Progress Texas. That was a close. Has that Senate race been called yet?
I think it's been called for Ted Cruz.
Okay.
Yeah. So, but I don't know the numbers. We'll have to ask Ed. But Beto O'Rourke was holding it close for a long time, and in the meantime, something that I think has been incredibly inspiring to watch about Beto O'Rourke is one, what a hard worker he is, which of course is always inspiring, but two, how incredibly well spoken he is. He's an amazing orator, which is, I think, kind of a lost art in some ways. And in fact, his name is just escaping me. The new Matheson, the new editor of the Deseret News. Boyd Matheson. He wrote a great piece, editorial, a couple of months ago talking about kind of the lost art of political speeches, and it's something that I've kind of taken to heart, and I have a goal in 2019, to every month find a powerful speaker from history and kind of watch what they've done and the ways in which they can speak to people. And as a communications director, ironically, even though I couldn't think of the right words just now, the ways in which we speak to people, the ways in which we speak about the issues is so incredibly, again, important. And so, and so Beto O'Rourke's ability to speak to people it has been inspiring to watch, I think, on the whole. And I think that a lot of progressive candidates can learn from him in the way in which the fact that he kept it as close as he did was absolutely remarkable. Yeah.
And you know, everybody loves a bridge builder.
Right,
so
yeah.
It's inspiring to see candidates like that. So to pivot slightly, something that we've been getting a lot of questions about recently are the judicial retention elections. So judges in Utah are appointed, but then they have to be re-elected, or they have to be elected to be retained. And that's something that a lot of voters came to us saying, that's not something I've really known about in the past, but I'm really interested in getting involved with now. And so there's a website that you can go to that has rankings for judges. One judge that really came under fire this year was Christine Johnson. There were a lot of op-eds back and forth, trashing her, defending her. Holly Richardson, who's a prominent voice in Utah politics, was really strongly opposed. And so we have the stats on her retention, and she is up by 78%. So 78% of voters have said yes, that they would like to retain her. Okay. And which is about average. If anything, it's a little high for judges. They usually stay between 70, 75 to the low 80s. So it seems like that has not taken much of a toll on her election numbers.
All right, and so our next guest is here, Matt Lyons. Matt, welcome.
Hello, yes, welcome, Matt.
I think that you should stand the entire
to our show.
If requested.
Okay, so before Matt gets into it, I would just like to say that it's fascinating watching the 2nd Congressional District race. Shireen is really pulling her own, right?
Yeah, she's run a great campaign. She's engaged and mobilized people, and she's done a remarkable job, I think, for that race.
Great.
And that's a tough district.
Yeah, and
that hasn't received a lot of attention.
And it's geographically really large, right? So it goes from Salt Lake City all the way down to St. George. And so because of the way it's gerrymandered, you barely get from one corner to the other with driving through the same district.
Yeah.
It takes 6 hours to get from one spot to the next.
And so, Matt, we never really introduced you. Matt is the former executive director of the Utah Democratic Party, and now he is a consultant for a lot of different campaigns around the state.
That's true.
So he has a lot of political knowledge. So we're excited to pick his brain.
Yeah. So let's start. What issues?
Do you know how many people are watching?
How many people are watching?
Keep going.
What issues are most important to Utahns in your experience, having been in this world for quite a while?
I'm actually super impressed at what Medicaid is doing in terms of the Medicaid expansion. We've got Proposition 3, right? Have you guys talked about that? I'm just joining late. but super impressed at what the overall turnout is and the overwhelming response to that is, right? I mean, you know, Utahns are known as being more conservative, and they're kind of in that sort of position. But also, like, the legislature is very anti kind of Medicaid expansion. You know, ABU and the work that you guys have done for a long time has been super impressive in that sort of field and space. But you know, although the legislatures overwhelmingly oppose Medicaid expansion, it seems like Utah voters are voting for it at a rate of almost 2-1. And I think that's going to be the big kind of story, I think, for what happened this election. You know, what kind of passed here. As a state, I mean, it's unexpected, and I think, but it shows that, you know, people are compassionate. They care about people. They want to lend a helping hand when it's necessary. Give kind of people a hand up. They don't want to, you know, bankrupt people into healthcare sort of issues, and they're willing to lend a hand when it's important. And that's what I think is really great for Utah.
So, assuming that that the trend holds true and Utah takes a strong stand in support of Medicaid, what happens for Utah to keep moving the needle forward? How do we get more progressive candidates elected to office? How do we move that policy forward?
I mean, there's Proposition 4, it's on the ballot, right? I mean, it's got a good margin, but it's certainly narrowing, and we've got to kind of watch that as it kind of goes. I mean, that'll help kind of bring kind of the independent redistricting to Utah, which would be helpful, so we're less gerrymandered both in the state house and Senate sort of level. You know, overall, though, I think, you know, I mean, Utah, it's a matter of working with both Democrats and kind of moderate Republicans, and to have a conversation about what the residents in their districts sort of want, and how they can be represented on the Hill. And that's what it's going to take to kind of be successful and move Utah forward to a more progressive sort of state. It's kind of really building this coalition of both moderate Republicans and kind of progressive Democrats, and finding those shared sort of issues like Medicaid expansion.
Yeah.
That they
everybody
both,
gets sick.
Right. They get it. They feel it. They've been there, and they want to help with it, help others.
Yeah. And so we're coming off an election year and moving into an off year. So what does that mean? What's the work that needs to be done during an off year?
In Utah, off years are all about municipal races, right? So mayor, city council, is kind of the big sort of set. And that's really what I think people are going to be watching, right? And so if individuals have thought about running for office or watching this sort of election cycle and they want to be more engaged, like looking at where they live and looking at what's up for election is a great chance. And really so much policy happens at that local level, right? Who's running for city council, who's running for mayor. It's those individuals that get to at least start to develop a relationship with people in their communities, right? Get a sense of what their community cares about, and they can move those forward. And so running for office at those very kind of local levels, very granular, is what really, you know, makes people good candidates for future sort of office as well.
How much experience do you need to win at a very local level?
I say this in a nice sort of way. There are a surprising number of candidates that wake up one day and say, I'm going to run for office, including our president, right? And if you can get to that point just because you decide to put your name forward and take that step that's courageous and, you know, and willing to push your name forward, that's what it takes, right? And so, you know, I mean, it's no secret I'm not super supportive of our president, but that he woke up one day, decided to run for office, he became president, and I think that means that anyone, whether it's from mayor, city council, state house, state senate, you know, or Congress, if they want to run and they feel committed to what they do and they've got a really strong core of values they care about, they should put their name forward and take a stab at it, because that's really what our democracy is about. It's about, you know, meeting people where they are, and, you know, those who care about certain things, that you can feel that, and that's who wins elections now.
Great. And what is the path to victory for the left in Utah in the coming years? We know that our demographics are shifting. We know that we have a massively booming population, not just because we have lots of kids in Utah, but because people are moving here. We've got a growing tech sector. Is there a place, is there opportunity for progressives and the left in Utah to start claiming some of that?
I think we should remove the conversation of what's left and what's right? I think issues that are typically characterized as left really are ones that can hone across demographics and hone across kind of individuals in different districts and communities, right? And so I think we're seeing that tonight, certainly in the healthcare sort of propositions being put forward, is that, you know, that healthcare is definitely a left issue. Obamacare, and the Republicans have campaigned against it, and so, but we're seeing that overwhelmingly adopted here in the state. And so I think it's not a matter of seeing things as left or right, but finding those common ground. You know, I still think healthcare, I think, is really important. I think voter rights and access to the ballot and making sure your voice heard is super important. I think education is important in the way that we kind of view and support kind of our next class. I think jobs and the economy and things that work, kind of economy that works for everyone, not just that kind of top 1%. I think that's also really important. I think it's finding those sort of values that really transcend left and right. That's how Democrats can move forward or progressives can move forward in the state.
Great. Well, thank you, Matt, for joining us.
Thank you.
Thanks for being
Sorry
here.
I was a touch late.
That's okay.
But I appreciate it. And I was fashionable while I was together. I didn't pull my Bill O'Reilly moment, which I thought about briefly. Right? Do it?
No.
Well, it's already over. No. Let's end this shit.
Matt is fired. All right, so that is the end of our interviews for the evening. Thank you so much for joining us. Of course, let's just do a recap of what we've learned so far. So in terms of statewide races, Mitt Romney has won that race, and so thank you, Jenny Wilson, for all of the work that you have done running a statewide race. You've done an amazing job, and it's great especially for women to see another woman running a statewide race and to run for elected office. So we so appreciate that. And then in the 1st Congressional District, Rob Bishop, it's been called for Rob Bishop. So thank you, Lee Castillo, who we spoke with earlier tonight, for running your campaign and doing all of the work that you've done, kind of jumping into this as a first-time candidate. Now, in CD2, it's kind of closing up. It looks like Chris Stewart has taken the lead, but Shireen Ghorbani has really kept it tight. So we'll keep watching that as it goes on. In the 3rd Congressional District, John Curtis is ahead, and we've spoken with James Singer on our Better Utah broadcast, which is every Wednesday at 12:30 before. He's done an amazing job, particularly when it comes to raising the voices of Navajo voters again in San Juan County. So we appreciate what he's done there.
Would love to see him run again.
Yeah.
So.
And then in the 4th Congressional District, which is of course the tightest race of the state, and is a federally watched race. Is a nationally watched race. Ben McAdams, who is challenging the incumbent Mia Love, is currently ahead at 53% and Mia Love at 47%. But again, those numbers can shift. We have a lot of numbers that are still trickling in. It could be days, if not weeks, before we know the results of this election. And then, do you want to update us on propositions?
Yes. So right now, the 3 propositions on the ballot, medical marijuana, Medicaid expansion, and fair redistricting, are all ahead. Proposition 4, which is fair redistricting, is the most narrow of all of those. It's at 51%. Votes again are at 48%. So that's something to keep an eye on as the night goes on. And again, you can find all of this at electionresults.utah.gov. Prop 3, Medicaid expansion is ahead by 55%, and medical marijuana is ahead by 54%. And then the non-binding opinion question, voters are against it by 65, almost 66%. Also, all of the constitutional amendments have wide support. A, B, and C,
and then of course, if you haven't already heard, the Democrats have taken the House and the Republicans have kept the Senate. So this is pretty much in the center of what we thought would happen tonight. So we'll keep watching. I just heard a loud yell from somewhere, so I'm sure something just happened. Keep watching, and we will. Thanks for joining us tonight.
Thank you.